and welcome to another episode of Neurodiversity with Theo Smith, where today we have an incredible guest, Grant Harris. Grant has a background in consultancy and advisory services. He's pivoted in supporting children into young people with diverse individual needs. And he's also started helping within the community from a neurodiversity and neuroinclusion perspective. Like many ND pros, he's pivoted across his career and being very successful at doing that. So we're going to dive into that. We're going to understand some of the complexities around that life journey, some of the incredible work he does today, but also his perspective from his part of the world and what is going on currently around his space and place. So without further ado, Grant, would you like to introduce yourself to our audience today and just give them a quick snippet beyond my simple introduction into who Grant is and what he's about?
Oh, Theo, I appreciate that grand entrance. This is an honor and a pleasure for me to be here. I've watched your work from afar for some time. I respect you and the work that you've been able to do, so I appreciate the opportunity to come and have this conversation in front of your audience. So it's definitely a privilege. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Grant Harris. I am based outside the DC area, stateside, across the pond. I am many things, but from a work perspective, I am a Black man in America who is a small business owner. I'm a family man. I have a wife and 3 kids. I have sisters. I'm a brother. I'm a son, husband, father, and also an entrepreneur of sorts. On top of that, I happen to be a person with a disability, and I happen to be autistic. And we'll talk more about my diagnosis and how that came about as we go along. I am also founder and president of GTH Consulting, which is a boutique management consulting firm. And I offer customized DEIA, organizational development, and human capital services to both public and private clients. Really, my work is about helping individuals and institutions achieve a new level of excellence by moving from compliance to community. We could talk more about that. Compliance is really is a mindset, and community is really more a set of behaviors. And on top of that, I also encourage and promote neurodiversity in the workplace from the boardroom to the mailroom. So I spend a lot of my time having conversations like these with folks like yourself to spread more of not only my personal story, which we'll get into, but stories of people that look like me, who are marginalized, people of color, Black men specifically, also autistic people, which is the larger community, just me. So I spend a lot of my time doing that. In terms of credentials, I have several degrees and certifications that make me sound smarter than what I am. I have an undergrad in psychology, an MBA in organizational psychology and development, a postmaster's in educational leadership and administration. I am a certified diversity executive through the Institute of Diversity Certification, and I am also diversity management certified. My business holds several supplier diversity credentials and certifications as well that I pursue in order to help position my business to help other people do better work. So all that said, that's a bit about me. If I had to list a couple of fun facts there for you, Theo, I happen to be a Hall of Fame athlete. I am in the Hall of Fame of my high school because at one point in time I used to be fast and agile, and I was an excellent football player. And my current claim to fame is the fact that I memorized every flag of every country in the world at one point in time in under 30 days, not because I had to, just because I wanted to, because I enjoy flags. And part of my abilities is the ability to absorb vast amounts of information. So I appreciate the opportunity, Theo, and very much looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, love it. I mean, I'm an appreciator of flags, right? As somebody who's Welsh, the Welsh dragon is kind of a
Yeah,
very old
yeah,
emblem on flags that still remains, quite unique in terms of its age
yeah.
today. So, but I wouldn't be able to tell you much more about many of the other flags. I think that is it's a particular area of interest. But it's fascinating that you share that because that shows it's when we talk about special interests, when we talk about having a deep passion and focus for a particular topic, right? And that topic can be as diverse as human brains. But when we
Mm,
set our minds to do something, we can exceed expectations in terms of delivering that. And you're talking about, as an elite athlete, remembering, all the flags. And I guess pretty much anything else you have done in your life and career. But let's look at this. Because of the diverse nature of what you've done, because of what you've achieved, was there ever a realization that those experiences were how those experiences came about, that they were part of your unique makeup, that it was something happening in your brain that was diverse to other brains,
mm.
and a reason why you were able to achieve some of those things? And do you feel you've not been able to achieve some of the things that you've been able to achieve because of that as well? And
Mm.
at what point did that start to come clear to you? And I guess I'm highlighting specifically the autism and the diagnosis and that
Yeah.
experience. Was it something you always knew, or is it something that was like a complete wake up moment to you?
Yeah, great question, and a lot to unpack there. No, I did not always know. My diagnosis came about 3 years ago, so I'm late diagnosed in the game. As you might know, most autistic people are in America at least are diagnosed between the ages of 2 to 6. I was not diagnosed until in my late 30s, so it was a while, and I have my wife to thank for that. She's part of my story. I probably would not be diagnosed at the moment if it wasn't for her. And you talk about wins and successes and things that have been difficult. Part of the reason that I got diagnosed is because we were going through difficult time communicating as a married couple. My wife is ADHD, and she's been diagnosed for a very long time and medicated. And my oldest daughter has some executive functioning challenges and has battled depression. So neurodiversity is not new in my home, but it was newest to me. Um, at that time in my life, I had taught autistic kids at the middle school level before I knew I was autistic. So that probably led to some of my success because I had that unbeknownst familiarity because I taught autistic kids in that environment. But no, I had no idea that I was autistic. My wife, in many years prior, before we were married, thought that I might be, and had whispered it not to me but to other people around. So, but I did not grow up with a knowledge of disability within my family, an extensive knowledge. There wasn't conversations about autism or disability. I'm the first person in my family to be diagnosed with a disability of this nature, and to my knowledge. So it was new and it was different from that perspective when it was attributed to me specifically. I was aware of neurodiversity, I was aware of autism because of the things that I have already shared, but not attributing it to myself. So that uh, realization or that reflection in terms of my non-linear work history, I have had many jobs in my day. I've had several careers in my day. Now, with the generation that I belong to, millennials, it's not unusual because millennials are going to have 9, 10, 11, 12 jobs in their lifetime. That's whether you're neurotypical or not. That's just the generational work. It's not traditionalist where you have 2 or 3 jobs max. We're long gone from the industrial age. However, within that is like the finding yourself kind of deal and having the difficulties in vastly different arenas. So I've been in recruiting, I've been in management consulting, I've been in education, both K-12 and higher ed, which they're both education, but they're completely different. If anyone has ever been in those environments, I've been in the classroom, I've been an administrator, which is completely different if you've been in those environments. I have been a corporate worker bee. I've been an entrepreneur 3 times over. All these things um, have been the nonlinear aspect of my work life. And up until the last handful of years, it was always, well, like I can't really find the footing. I had achieved like vast amounts of success and then depths of like failure when I look back on it. But then also I look back and say, well, that yeah, I was trying, but I also have this ability to reinvent myself. I've reinvented myself in every one of those scenarios, going from a highly restricted environment to a not restricted environment, going to being teaching in a classroom to being an entrepreneur in my own right and being a corporate worker bee, like all of these different types of instances. Now I see that I was able to deep dive in each one of them because I didn't have formal training in all of those roles. But what I did do, and what I do, is when I am faced with a situation or I'm in a position, I deep dive and I learn everything I can about hands-on how I do that work. I didn't go to school for any of the diversity, equity, inclusion work that I do. That wasn't my schooling. But when I got into this work and found that it was for me and I was for it, I did a deep dive and I learned everything that I could about doing this work from everyone that I could. And that I attribute to my autistic nature about the deep focus and then being able to kind of reinvent myself from this nonlinear perspective and achieving many, many things in each one of those verticals, although those verticals are very different in nature.
Interesting. So I was going to ask you, because you reference autism as a disability and the point at getting the diagnosis as the realization of being disabled neurologically, I was fascinated around what elements of that you see as disabling. And you've talked about some of those, which I find fascinating, and shared some of those experiences, although they are, of course, different. Which is that even though you have been very successful, there's been what sounds like quite a few points in your life where it's become overwhelming, or you've hit a brick wall, or it's come to an end, or and therefore you've pivoted, you've changed, you've moved, and so as you've gone on, you may have not known at that time that some of those barriers were maybe because of the way that you were processing the world, because of the way you were thinking about the world, because of your inability maybe sometimes to be able to get over the next hump, whatever that may be. So when you started to recognize that as these are disabling factors, did you then recognize that, and maybe through the experiences of working with young people who at that time you didn't know, that you identified with perhaps more than you knew, were you able then to look at some of those and think, now I understand that they're disabling factors. There are mechanisms that I can start to use to remove some of those. And then through the work that I can do, who cares if you were schooled in it, right? Because we have many periods in our life of schooling. And if we don't, what are we doing, right? We should be continually evolving, learning, leaning on those past experiences to create a better future. So was that a point in your life when you got the diagnosis to really profoundly change what has happened in the past, both some incredibly positive stuff, but also some barriers that you now could think, I could remove them and I can now potentially support others or organizations at removing some of those barriers? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it wasn't a light switch. It's definitely been a gradient. It's definitely been a time shift over time. These things I've gone most of my life acting, thinking, being, communicating a certain way. Obviously, trying to be better as a person just because I'm on the planet. And I'm always like, well, how can I get better? Those people who know me, I'm always thinking, how can I get 1% better? But I did not know that some of those barriers were obstacles that I can't necessarily fix. They were already inherent in the way that my brain works and my body operates. So it's been a gradient, but some of those, a large thing for me is communication, uh, social emotional interaction, levels of empathy. I am able to show empathy to certain people at certain points during certain things, but in other ways, it's like non-existent, at least to them. I think that I might be giving some empathy, but in their mind, it's non-existent. I used to be, for the majority of my life, based on my experiences, very black and white. It was yes, no, red, blue, black, white, and there wasn't much in between. Um, as I've grown older, one, as I've grown older, two, being a married man, having kids, and you learn more of the gray naturally. But on top of that, thinking autistically, I have been able to understand, okay, well, these are more of my thought processes. These are more of why I might be operating this way in conversation with people like yourself, and reading literature and research and how that operates and being much more aware, personally aware, recognizing who I am and where I am on my journey, uh, has helped with my level of communication. The fact that we're on camera now and we're really talking about masking in some way, shape, or form, because usually I prefer not to be on camera, but I have been able to do things like use this little ball that I'm having in my hand, transfer energy, these kind of things. I look off to the side of the camera versus looking directly at you all the time, and that helps with my ability and my stamina. The people around me, I have been able to communicate my needs to them much better in terms of, hey, after I talk to Theo for 45 minutes, I'm probably not going to talk a lot for like the next hour because of recharging my batteries. Specifically with my wife and my family, we both come from large families. My family is quieter. Her family is very loud for a very long time. I go to their house and I'd be like a church mouse and wouldn't say a thing because it's very bright, it's very loud. There's competition for conversation. Even between two people, there's other conversations happening. And that would just wear me out and burn me out. And she would be upset after that because she would think that I'm not interacting like on purpose. Like I didn't like them. I didn't want to be there. That wasn't the case. So before now we have, she has a much better understanding, but now I'm able to communicate with her and we have signals and we have uh, uh, both physical and verbal signals to say, oh, when I need a break, when we host parties and I get tired of the emotional aspect and you can see it on my face. And I don't think that I'm giving that off, but she's very in tune to that. And she's like, everybody else thinks you're an ass because now my body and my emotional battery has drained. So now, even before we have those events, those family events or those friends events with friends, we have the conversation before. She's like, well, if you need a break, what's the safe word? What's the break word? I am more consciously aware of my facial presence and my being. So all of these things happen before, and then after we have a little bit of a debrief and say, hey, that was better than the last time. And you remember when I said that word or when I touched your elbow, these kind of things to reiterate the fact that the communication is getting better. And these are things that also can happen in organizational spaces. It's not just with life partners at home, the level of communication to say, this is what I need, this is how I work best, and then having a debrief around that. How did that go? How was that meeting? How has this process been going for you since we implemented this process? And it doesn't have to be an accommodation, and we don't have time today to talk about the whole accommodations conversation, but it doesn't have to be an accommodation. It could be an adjustment, and that could be a conversation and a communication from the person who identifies as being neurodistinct and the person who identifies as not. And it doesn't matter what level you are. And again, there are dynamics and social dynamics and corporate dynamics that we don't have time to talk about today. But the umbrella is communicating upfront, communicating during, and communicating after.
Yeah, and often that gets missed. That's the problem. And when you're in a heightened level of stress or anxiety, it's often the wrong moment to start that conversation, whether that's with a child, whether that's with a manager, whether that's with a life partner. It's the moment is often missed when it's in the state of stress.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I've definitely learned that, like have the conversation before you're on the edge of the cliff,
Mm,
because then it might well be too late. And I think so many people that's the thing that they don't have the opportunity to learn about themselves. And young people, certainly, because they're being put in that hyper state of stress so often,
yes.
and then they're being expected to explain themselves or to be better in a moment of where they're finding it most difficult. And I think explaining that quite nicely there through family, because you're
Mm,
right, it's the easiest people to upset. Right?
yeah, yeah.
Those very close
Family
to you.
is family is your first community. And I talk about again moving organizations and individuals from compliance to community. Family is your first community. That's the practice ground to say, hey, well, let's try some of these new structures. Let's try some of this new communication because they're supposed to be, and more often than not, they're the people who love you the most. They're the people who are going to be the most supportive. Families are imperfect, like everything else, but on the whole, they're the ones to start that level of community, and then you extrapolate that to the workplace as you go along.
Brilliant. So you've gone on now to write 3 books.
Mm,
You make it your life's work now to support organizations, communities, bring people together, focus around neuroinclusion, neurodiversity is a wider concept. Those books have not just been focused around neurodiversity, have they? They've been focused more broadly around D&I.
mhm,
Tell us a little bit around what the driver to write those. And the context is I ended up writing a book on neurodiversity because it felt like the thing that I needed the people to read, who may not um, think in the way that I do, right? Because I'm less of a
mm,
reader. I struggle with reading. So it was almost like if I create the book, it is to pass over to those people I might struggle to communicate with. So I
mhm,
can give them it in a way that they understand. That kind of made sense to me. And then I could
mm.
get all that chaos in my head into a book. What was the driver for you to not create one, but 3 interlinked books to support organizations and people within D&I? And I've got another interesting question after that, I'll mention now, around the state of play, specifically in the US currently around D&I, and do you think that's under attack?
Yeah,
But,
yeah. So
let's
none
go to
of
books.
none of my books are focused on neurodiversity. They are focused on the implementation, the integration, and the improvement of DEIA-related policy, practice, and procedure. So the first book is all about what is DEI, how does it work, definitions, terminology, frameworks. I built a proprietary framework that's in the book called RACE, RACE, and how to implement in the workplace and how to maintain that work. The second book is about unconscious bias. I have a bias against unconscious bias because, unfortunately, in America, with bias training, that's pretty much like the only bias that they talk about is the unconscious bias. And basically, a lot of people use it as an excuse. Oh, I didn't know. I wasn't thinking about it. It just happened. So then, therefore, I don't have any responsibility. That's not the case. You do have responsibility, and there are upwards of 15 different types of biases that people could experience in at any given day. And the third is about inclusive leadership, which does touch on some neurodiversity points. But I was writing these books before my full flourishing of understanding of neurodiversity as a whole and autism specifically. So it was before that because I was an a DEI practitioner, in terms of my work and business before I started deep diving on having conversations about neurodiversity. So none of the books are focused on that, and it started out as a relationship with my publisher. It really started out as a ghostwriting project, and I said, hey, I know how to write. I like writing. I'm good at it. You got a project. I can do this for you. And in conversation with the publisher, they were like, no, you should write these books and you should be the main author. because you know what you're talking about and you could do it better than we could. I was not expecting that. And I said, well, worst case scenario is I write a book or three and they don't sell at all. Like none of them sell. That's worst case scenario. Best case scenario is I write a few books and I can use them to position my business and they sell and they support the work that I do, which has been the case. So it's definitely worked out, but I was not looking to write books at all. I wasn't looking to be an author. I just had a project at the time from a business perspective uh, that turned into an opportunity. And that type of situation has popped up again and again in my life in the past and here recently when I wasn't looking to do thing one, but it popped up because I was positioning myself to be around the right people or be in a certain situation to receive what I didn't know was coming, and it's been a blessing. So, and the three books is because I also have the ability, while I have the ability to absorb vast amounts of information quickly, I also have the ability to produce vast amounts of information quickly. So, and especially when it's something that I enjoy that is a quote unquote special interest, and that's where those came about. So it definitely was not neurodiversity focused to begin with, and I have had several book signings, and honestly, I'm not the best marketer. That's a goal of mine for this year is to market the books better and deeper and broader. But that's the story behind the writing.
Love it. And yeah, I was just saying, well, there's a number four then, isn't it? You, now you can bring all of that together.
Yeah,
And neurodiversity and those life experiences. I'm sure that would be an incredible follow-on to the
yeah, yeah,
trilogy.
yeah. Yeah,
Maybe.
I have to think about that. I have to think about that.
Good stuff. So tell us a little bit about then the specific work you do helping organizations. If organizations were interested in your work, if people were interested in following your work and what you do, what does that look like? Give us a little insight.
Yeah, so the clients I serve, both public and private, like I said, I've worked with local, state, and federal agencies, government agencies. Yeah. And I've also worked with small to medium-sized private entities and vast channels of industry. But I work with leaders, and I say I work with leaders because they are the folks that have the most power and authority in most situations to implement and to integrate. Other people have more power and authority to improve, but those conversations start at that level. I offer a la carte services, anything from 1 hour to 1 day to 1 week when it comes to let's look at your neuro inclusion practices, get you an executive summary, which is a high 30,000 foot level, and then dig under the surface of the water, and then all the way down to the bottom of the sea in terms of this is where you are and this is where you could be. Other work from a broader perspective is always looking at the human capital perspective and the organizational development. How effective and efficient and equitable are your policies, practices, and procedures? And you'll hear a common theme from me, Theo. I like to work in threes. So, implement and improve and integrate and policy, practice, procedure, because those things, it's one thing to have it in black and white, but then it has to come off the page, that policy. Well, what's the procedure behind it? And what's the actual practice? I can write something down on paper for Theo, turn the faucet on this way and then do this way. But that's not actually how Theo does it in the real world because Theo's a person. And how do we replicate the best and the leading practices? So I say effective and efficient. Does it work? Are your practices working? Are they effective? Are they efficient? Are they utilizing time, talent, and treasure? Another three, I look at how much time do you have? What's the talent that you're working with? And what's the treasure, which is money? And most importantly, are these things equitable? Are they serving the people that need the services the most? And how so? Are they hurting the people that are hurting the most? So these types of conversations, my framework, which I won't go deep into today, the RAC race framework is an acronym, stands for recognize, acknowledge, cultivate, and engage. And it's a cyclical framework that I work with leaders through in order to move from point A to point B, like I said, effectively, efficiently, and equitably. So that comes in strategic planning, that comes through communications and messaging, ensuring that your brand is on point, especially when it comes to neuroinclusion, because today, especially with the younger generation and Gen Z, and now the new generation, Gen Alpha, is being born. Over half of that generation identifies as being neurodistinct. And that's just the people who are talking about it. So when it comes to young people, they want to see brands, they want to see organizations, and especially in the government space, which Theo, in America, you might be interested to know that the federal government is number one or number two, at least in the top three of employers who are hiring the fastest here recently in the last handful of years. And you would think, oh, the federal government is full of old people ready to retire. Well, yeah, they are, but also it's also full of young people looking to start their career. And those young people looking to start their career are looking for neuroinclusive environments that allow them to flourish in the best way that they know how. So these are conversations, these are tenets, these are frameworks that I have with leaders and organizations. And how you can get in contact with me is via LinkedIn, and I know you'll post all this in the show notes. But it starts with a conversation, and my approach is consultative. It's value based. It's not hourly based like a lawyer. You pay me X amount of dollars an hour as a commodity. It's based on value, flat fee for services, because I want to provide maximum value for my clients as soon as possible for the longest time possible.
Excellent, thank you. It was just a comment there as we draw this to a close today. Really appreciate your time. The focus on senior leaders, and I think I mentioned around the potential attack on D&I globally. Where there's been challenges from world leaders, sometimes from the press, from organizations. But I think the real opportunity there comes from individuals who get it, right? Who have lived experience. I see it time and time again. The leaders who really buy into this are the ones who have neurodistinct children or family members, or they see the barriers, they see the opportunities, and therefore they're the ones who take action. So I'm hopeful from that perspective that no matter what happens in the world, in reality, at the moment, those people who want to make a difference, they want to make a difference because they've seen why it matters. They've seen the opportunity, the benefits, and therefore it's those leaders who will take action no matter what happens in society or the world. So I guess it's a call to action that individuals with power, with privilege, but with lived experience, you are absolutely the people who need to take action. You are possibly, so in certain situations, the only people who will take action. So if you don't, we don't progress forwards with this topic. So I very much appreciate you calling out some of those things, Grant. And I'll definitely get in the show notes how to connect with you via LinkedIn and what have you. It's been a real pleasure. Any final thoughts to wrap today's conversation up?
Yeah. You heard me describe myself as neurodistinct, and we didn't necessarily have that conversation today. I don't describe as neurodivergent because I believe that we're all distinct human beings to begin with, whether or not we are neurotypical or otherwise. We're all distinct human beings, and we all deserve to live a life full of distinction, in my opinion. And that includes the workplace, because we spend more time at work than we do at home. We spend more time at work than we do sleeping. So it's very important to understand. And as always, my bottom line message is that we all deserve to live a life full of distinction. And in order to do that, the best way that I've seen and that I know how is to continue to build community. small communities, large communities. Doesn't matter where they are, doesn't matter who leads them, who participates in them, but building communities that understand that principle, and then working towards fulfilling of distinction. So, and you, my friend, are definitely distinct in terms of all of your work, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I look forward to continuing our relationship as we both grow in this work together.
Yeah, love that. Very much appreciate the final description there, and I agree. I like it a lot. So listen, anybody who's listening, take some time to connect with Grant. If nothing else, follow him on LinkedIn and his work.
Yeah.
And like always, thank you to everybody who joined us today. And we'll be back with you soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Theo.
Cheers.